My brother was the favorite for 30 years. Then he emptied parents' bank account, stole their car, and vanished. Now I'm all they have left. I was 24 when my mother told me I was just the spare. She didn't say it in a moment of anger or with malice. No, she said it with the kind of detached calm you'd use to describe the weather or recite a grocery list. Lucas is the heir, she said, folding a dish towel like it wasn't the final nail in something I had quietly mourned my whole life. You've always been independent. That word, independent. It used to sound like a compliment. It used to mean I was strong, capable, self-reliant. But in my family, independent meant invisible. It meant I wasn't a priority. It meant, you'll figure it out on your own, so we don't need to worry about you. My older brother Lucas was the golden son. 2 years older, loud and charming, the kind of person who could trip over his own lies and still get applause. Star athlete. Prom king. First one in our family to get into a prestigious private school, even if he flunked out after 2 semesters. My parents celebrated every milestone like it was a coronation. When he got a C+ in chemistry, there was a family dinner to cheer him up. When did I make the honor roll all 4 years of high school? A generic, good job, and a distracted smile. I learned early on that nothing I did would ever measure up, not because it wasn't good, but because I wasn't Lucas. At family gatherings, the aunts and uncles would swarm around him like he was a celebrity. Lucas, tell us about the football game. Lucas, you must be beating the girls off with a stick. I'd be somewhere in the kitchen, refilling the chip bowl, and someone might pat me on the back out of pity. I was the background character in the story of my own life. But I kept my head down. I followed the rules. I didn't cause drama. I read books, studied hard, and stayed out of trouble. I made peace with being overlooked, until I realized that peace was just resignation with better PR. The wedge between me and my family wasn't built overnight. It started as hairline cracks that widened over time. One of the first deep fractures came when I was 14. Lucas had crashed his brand new Mustang, gifted to him for his 16th birthday, into a telephone pole while drunk. The car was totaled. The streetlight was split in half. By some miracle, no one was hurt. I remember sitting in my room, listening to my parents pace back and forth downstairs, panicked and whispering like the world was ending. But the next morning, the narrative had already shifted. He's just under pressure, my dad said, buttoning his shirt for work. It's a tough age. We have to protect his future, my mom whispered, as if she were plotting a rescue mission. And they did. They paid for everything quietly, pulled strings to have the incident erased from the record, and made sure Lucas never had to deal with the consequences. I was grounded that same year for forgetting to take the trash out. 1 week. No TV. No phone. Lucas almost killed someone and got comfort. I forgot trash day and got silent. By the time I turned 16, Lucas had started helping himself to my things, shirts, headphones, even cash I kept in a lockbox under my bed. I confronted him once, and he just grinned. What's yours is mine, little bro. When I told our parents, my mom looked at me like I just tattled on Santa Claus. Don't start drama, she sighed. Lucas has a lot on his plate. He always had a lot on his plate. I remember one Christmas in particular. I had saved up for months to get my dad a vintage Dodgers cap, a signed collector's item I found on eBay. I wrapped it carefully, wrote a personal note, and handed it to him after dinner. He smiled politely, thanked me, and set it aside. Later that night, I saw Lucas wearing it. Cool, he said. You got this for me? My dad laughed. Looks good on you. I just walked to the garage and sat in the dark, next to the water heater, trying to pretend it didn't matter. I was 18. When college applications rolled around, I was accepted into a strong state school on scholarship. Lucas had already flunked out of one private university, but my parents paid for another, this time in Arizona, because in my mom's words, he needs a fresh start. They didn't offer me $1, didn't help me pack. I loaded my second-hand Civic with whatever I could fit and left without even a goodbye dinner. I kept my distance over the next few years. Called when necessary, visited less and less. Every time I came home it was the same. Lucas had another failed business idea, another ex-girlfriend, another bill he couldn't pay. My parents would look at me with hopeful eyes and say, "Could you maybe help him out, just this once?" I always said no. Politely. But it still felt like betrayal in their eyes. Eventually I stopped visiting altogether, until last year. My dad had a stroke. It wasn't fatal, but it was serious. Hospital time, physical therapy, the works. My mom called me, her voice cracking for the first time in years, and asked if I could come home. "Just for a little while," she said. "I need help managing everything while Lucas figures things out." And despite everything, I said yes. Because no matter how much distance I'd put between myself and this house, I wasn't the kind of person who walked away from a family in crisis. I just didn't know that coming home was the worst decision I could have made. Coming back to the house I grew up in felt like walking into a museum where every exhibit was curated to remind me I didn't belong. Lucas's trophies still lined the hallway shelves, polished and lit with little spotlights my dad installed himself. Family photos on the wall showed Lucas smiling in cap and gown, Lucas with his first car, Lucas shaking hands with some coach or other. If I appeared in a frame, I was usually blurry in the background, cropped, dimly lit, forgotten. The air smelled like old carpet and lemon cleaner. Nothing had changed. Except my father, who now spent most of his days on the living room recliner, pale and exhausted, trying to reclaim basic speech and hand movement. His eyes would light up when I entered the room, and I'd help him practice words like water and thank you, while he gripped my wrist like it was a lifeline. My mother, to her credit, was trying. She looked tired. Really tired. Years of worshiping Lucas and managing his chaos had aged her. But she still fell into the same habits. She would speak to me like I was a guest. A helpful outsider. Someone to assist, not someone to grieve with. And Lucas? Lucas hadn't changed a bit. He showed up 2 days after I arrived, waltzing through the front door with his usual cocky grin. His hair was a little thinner now, and the bags under his eyes were deeper, but his arrogance was untouched. "Eli, my man," he said, clapping me on the back like we were best friends. "Heard you were in town." He smelled like cologne and cheap beer. "What brings you home?" he asked, knowing full well the answer. "Dad," I said flatly. He nodded like he was somehow involved in this recovery process. "Yeah, scary stuff. I've been meaning to visit, just been swamped with stuff, you know. Job hunting is brutal these days." That night at dinner he talked over everyone. Joked about how, old dad's got one foot in the grave, but hey, at least he can still hold a beer. My mother laughed a little too hard. I stared at my plate. Over the next few days I did most of the heavy lifting. Literally and emotionally. I drove Dad to therapy appointments, managed insurance paperwork, cooked, cleaned, and handled bills. Lucas came and went, usually asking for gas money or just $20 until payday. One afternoon, I overheard him in the kitchen whispering to our mother about me. "He's always trying to make me look bad," he said. "Don't fall for it, Mom. He's just here to prove a point." I should have left right then. Instead, I stayed. Because Dad was making progress. Because I wanted to believe things could be different. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, if I showed up when it really mattered, they'd finally see me. Then came the trust fund conversation. I didn't even know my parents had a trust fund. My mom brought it up casually one evening while we were sorting old medical records. "Your father and I set aside some money years ago," she said, rifling through a drawer. "It was meant for emergencies, college, weddings, that sort of thing." I nodded. "Makes sense." She hesitated. "We're thinking about giving it to Lucas, just until he gets back on his feet." My stomach dropped. "Wait," I said. "The whole thing?" "Well," she said, flustered. "It's just sitting there. You're already stable. Lucas, he needs help." I laughed, once. A short, bitter sound. "I've been helping," I said. "Every day since I got here. I never asked for anything." My mom looked uncomfortable. "You've always been the strong one, Eli. Your brother's different." That phrase again. That excuse. That night I stood outside on the porch for hours, trying to calm myself, trying to remind myself that I didn't come home for money or recognition. I came for Dad. But something in me cracked. It wasn't about the trust fund. It was about being invisible. Again. I went inside and opened the drawer where we kept the paperwork. Scanned through the files. And that's when I saw it. The withdrawal forms. Signed by my mother. Co-signed by Lucas. The money was already gone. The trust fund was already gone. $83,000. I sat at the dining table holding the statement, my hands trembling. Lucas hadn't just been asking for help. He'd been draining them. And they let him. My mother, who used to count coupons like sacred scripture, had signed off on this like she was buying milk. I took a photo of the documents with my phone and walked to the living room where she sat folding laundry. "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" I asked quietly. She looked up, startled. "Eli?" "The trust fund," I said, holding up my phone. "It's gone." Her face turned pale. We didn't think it would matter. You're doing fine. You have your job, your life." "It matters," I said, trying not to raise my voice. "Not the money. The betrayal." She opened her mouth, probably to offer another hollow justification, but I held up my hand. "You gave it all to him. Again. After everything." She looked down, and for once, she didn't say anything. Lucas wasn't even home. He'd gone out job hunting, which I was starting to suspect was code for drinking or gambling or whatever scheme he was cooking up. I went back to my room, slammed the door, and for the first time since I'd returned home, I cried. Ugly, shaking sobs that I hadn't let out since I was a kid, back when I still thought things would change if I just tried hard enough. The next day I packed my things. I had planned to leave quietly, to walk away without another word. But fate had different plans. Lucas came home drunk at 1 a.m., slamming the door and stomping through the kitchen. I heard him open the fridge, muttering about how nobody ever leaves food for me. Then he kicked something, I think the trash can. I stayed quiet. Maybe he'd pass out. But then I heard him stumble toward my room. He knocked once, then barged in. "Why are you leaving?" he slurred. I didn't answer. "You mad about the money?" He chuckled. "Come on, man. You don't need it." I stood up slowly. "You stole from our parents." He shrugged. "They gave it to me." "They didn't give. You manipulated them, like you always do." That's when his smile faded. "You always think you're better than me, huh?" he hissed. "Saint Eli, with his job and his perfect life. You don't know what it's like to struggle." "You're right," I said, "because I actually worked for everything I have." He lunged. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't even violent. More like a drunk tackle. We crashed into the nightstand, and for a second, I thought he was going to swing at me. But he didn't. He just collapsed. Face down on the floor. Pathetic. I stepped over him and walked to the living room. My mother had turned on the hallway light. She stood there, eyes wide, trembling. "Is he okay?" she asked, glancing past me. I didn't answer. I walked past her to the front door, opened it, and turned back only once. "I came here to help," I said. "But I won't stay where I'm treated like a stranger." "Eli, please," she whispered. "He needs us." "I needed you. And you weren't there." Then I walked out. I didn't go far that night, just drove around the empty streets of our hometown until the sun started bleeding over the horizon. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a place to stay. But I felt free. The silence in my car was worth more than anything Lucas had ever taken from me. That morning I booked a hotel room near the interstate. I didn't call my parents. I didn't check in. I didn't answer the texts from my mother, most of which started with please and ended with, "You don't understand." I didn't need to understand anymore. 3 days passed. I worked remotely from the motel, turned my phone off at night, and tried to sleep. It wasn't peaceful. My brain was still spinning from years of old wounds. But it was mine. My silence. My time. Then, on the 4th morning, I got a call from my dad's nurse. "Your father asked for you," she said. "He's been asking all day." I sighed. I wanted to ignore it. Part of me screamed to leave it all behind. But I couldn't. Not yet. When I walked into the house later that afternoon, the air felt heavier than usual. Like the walls had been crying. Lucas wasn't there. My mother was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of untouched tea. She looked up at me with hollow eyes. "He's gone," she said. I blinked. "What do you mean gone?" She shook her head. "Left this morning. Took Dad's backup credit card. Left a note. She pushed the piece of paper toward me. It read, "Don't worry. I'll pay it back. I just need space. You all picked Eli anyway. Have a nice life." There was a smear of something that looked like mustard on the corner. Typical. "He took the car," she added, almost like an afterthought. I didn't say anything. I just walked past her, down the hall to the living room. Dad was sitting up in his recliner, alert but pale. When he saw me, his mouth twitched, trying to form a smile. "Lee," he said slowly. "You, okay?" I sat next to him. "I'm okay, Dad. You?" He nodded once, then took my hand. "Sorry," he whispered. I looked at him. This man who used to carry me on his shoulders. This man who ignored me for 20 years in favor of a son who never lifted a finger. "For what?" I asked. "For not seeing," he said. "For not protecting." My throat tightened. He kept his eyes on mine. "You came back." I couldn't speak. I just squeezed his hand and nodded. That night after my dad fell asleep, my mother sat beside me on the porch with a glass of wine. She didn't offer me any. "I read your college essays once," she said suddenly. "You left a copy in your desk drawer. You wrote about wanting to be seen." I said nothing. "I didn't see you, Eli," she whispered. "I saw Lucas. Always Lucas. Because I was afraid of losing him." I turned to her. "What about losing me?" She started crying, and for the first time I didn't feel responsible for her tears. "I'm trying to fix this," she said. "I know it's too late, but I'm trying." "You want to fix it?" I asked. "Start by telling people the truth." She looked at me, confused. "What do you mean?" "Tell your sisters, your church friends, the neighbors. Tell them what Lucas really did. Tell them how he stole from you. From Dad. From me. Stop hiding him behind excuses." She looked horrified. "I can't." "Then you're not ready to fix anything." I stood up, opened the screen door and stepped back into the house. Later that night I emailed my landlord in Chicago to confirm my return. I booked my flight for Friday. They say time heals all wounds. They lied. Time only teaches you how to walk around the wound, how to dress it well enough that people stop asking questions. But healing comes when you finally stop waiting for an apology that will never come. I boarded my flight back to Chicago 2 days after Lucas disappeared. No dramatic goodbye. My mother helped me load the cab with one hand and wiped her tears with the other. My father sat by the window, watching like a ghost who finally learned how to feel shame. I didn't hug them. And yet, I didn't hate them either. 3 months passed. Lucas never came back. The card he stole was eventually maxed out on gas station snacks, liquor, and a motel in Reno. The bank refused to refund my parents. My mom tried to press charges, then dropped them. "He's still my son," she said in a voicemail I didn't listen to in full. I got a promotion at work, moved to a quieter apartment, bought a new bookshelf and filled it with the stories I never had time to read. I was doing fine. Until the envelope arrived. No return address. Just my name. My full name, Eli Nathaniel Hollis, written in handwriting I hadn't seen since high school. Inside, one sheet of paper. "Eli, you were always better than me. And I hated you for it. I wanted them to love me the way they admired you in silence. They never did. They pitied me. You think you were invisible. I was a reflection in a funhouse mirror. But you won. I saw it in Mom's face, in Dad's eyes, in yours. This isn't an apology. Just a truce. Burn it if you want. Lucas." There was no return address, no postmark, just ink. Just the truth. Finally unclothed. I didn't burn it. I framed it. Hung it in my hallway, right across from a mirror. Because what Lucas never knew was this. I didn't want to win. I just wanted peace. And sometimes, peace looks like no longer needing the people who once broke you to also be the ones who fix you. 6 months later, my mother called to tell me that she and my dad had updated their wills. "We split it 50-50, she said proudly, like she had finally solved the riddle of fairness. "Just in case he ever comes back." I smiled into the phone. "I hope he does." A pause. "You do?" "I do," I said. Because I'm not waiting for justice anymore. Because winning isn't about inheritance. It's about knowing who you are when everything else is stripped away. This story doesn't end with revenge. No public confrontation. No dramatic courtroom drama. No Facebook call-out post. Just a man, in his 30s, drinking tea by his own window, in his own home, under his own name. No longer the spare. No longer the son left behind. Just Eli. And that's enough. Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one.